Yeah, you got the Mac and Mac guys right here with you on Birds 365, streaming into your homes, your living rooms, your office, wherever you may be catching us in the car, on the phone. We thank you for streaming in. We got 2 hours of football talk coming your way. Johnny Mac, good to have you back. I know you were busy over at the NovaCare Complex watching the joint practice, or as much joint practice as they could get in before somebody had to throw a flag and say, yeah, that's enough. Before we break down everything that you saw yesterday, let's cut to the point on 2 major pieces of information. Number one, did the Eagles win the practice?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I said, the Cleveland practices were going to be the most important 2 days of the summer because Cleveland has some talent. Poor Shane Steichen doesn't have much talent. And without Jonathan Taylor, who was there, but obviously not participating, and a rookie quarterback who has tremendous physical gifts, but he's a long way away, very raw. They got some issues. Defensively, they're okay. They got some players, but and if you go back to that Indianapolis game last year, the Eagles really struggled with their defense. The Jalen Hurts, that was the game Jalen Hurts had to put him on his back and win the game by himself in the fourth quarter, basically running the football.
Mm-hmm.
So they have some talent on defense, and Gus Bradley's a good coach, good coordinator, I think. But yeah, they're not much of a challenge. And yeah, it wasn't close. It wasn't close.
Which one was more lopsided? Browns practice day 2 or Colts practice day 1?
Colts practice day 1.
So
I mean, the Browns are one of the reasons the Eagles, and they won, I put it in quotations, but they won day 2 pretty easily because Myles Garrett didn't practice. I mean, they couldn't block the guy. And if he was out there like it wasn't day 1, they weren't going to block him in day 2. So, I mean, but again, you don't game plan for Myles Garrett in practice. You're going to if you're playing the Browns, you're going to spend your entire week figuring out how to slow him down to some point. In practice, you say to poor Jordan Mailata, hey, just go out there and block him. Well, in the game, you're going to have Goddard chipping him, backs chipping him, everybody chipping him left and right, and you're going to be able to do some different things. You don't do that in practice, which is why I think a lot of people overemphasize certain things. You're just trying to hone down on individual techniques and fundamentals and all that stuff.
Right, but it tells you how great a player Myles Garrett is.
It tells you that.
You would take an entire week to figure out how the hell do we stop this guy. It doesn't happen every week in the NFL. You have a number one priority, but most priorities don't match up to what you have to do to make sure Myles Garrett doesn't wreck the game on you. All right, so the Colts have no game records. That's well recognized. All right, so Eagles win the day, win the practice rather handily, as Johnny Mac says. Did the Eagles win the fight?
Well, the fight wasn't really a fight. It was Jason Kelce sprinting from 30, 40 yards away and pancaking Zaire Franklin. Then everybody sort of raced to the area and started pushing and shoving. I didn't see any noticeable punches or anything of that nature. Just a bunch of, like I said, pushing, shoving. But when you see 2 NFL teams with 90 players each all gathering in one area, it looks like a melee. But it wasn't really. You remember the Aaron Donald video where he's swinging helmets?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like that.
And by the way, still hasn't had any repercussions from that.
Because it's practice.
No suspensions, no fines, nothing. Stone cold ridiculous by the NFL.
Yeah. So it wasn't like that. It was just a bunch of pushing and shoving, and then slowly settled down. They called off practice. Probably a good idea they called off practice. But it was very chippy. It was leading up to that. The play right before it went to Kenny Gainwell and Zaire Franklin, who was the instigator. Billy Kid, by the way, great story, good player. He was, he's sort of their energy guy, and he's being physical, trying to bully Kenny Gainwell a little bit. on the play before, and then on the play where Kelsey lost it, same thing. Gainwell, Franklin, and Kelsey. Kelsey's trying to stick up for his guy and trying to bully the bully, so to speak. And even before, I mean, Jalen Carter stripped the ball from Anthony Richardson. You're not supposed to do that. Derek Barnett picked it up. Of course, Derek Barnett got in the scuffle because he's Derek Barnett. And early in the practice, right away, there was a crossing pattern. Maybe on the first team drill, there was a crossing pattern to A.J. Brown right in front of Zaire Franklin, and Zaire did something A.J. didn't like. And they were A.J. was pissed off about that. So it was coming. And it was all Zaire Franklin driven. Maybe he was too happy to be back in Philadelphia.
Well, a couple things. You mentioned the fact that he gave Gainwell some hard shots, the second of which made Kelsey crazy, and he ran down and just lost his emotions and basically started the melee. I did see people report, and only Zaire Franklin could speak this. I didn't see a quote from him after about this. I heard what he said about Kelsey. He was surprised that the OG didn't come up to him afterwards and give him a chance to go face to face and go, "Hey, sorry about that. Hey, yeah, I'm sorry I had Kenny." Like, they didn't. They were separated and never got a chance to talk. But I saw someone report that they were assuming that maybe Zaire Franklin got a little overzealous because the Eagles ran a gadget play that Kenny Gainwell was throwing the football.
Yeah.
In a joint practice. There are certain rules to these practice things. And I would guess one of the unwritten rules is you're not running halfback option pass plays. Now, I get it. It was a play that Steichen designed that the Eagles didn't run, and it might have just been an homage from Sirianni to Shane Steichen, but you don't do that.
But not everybody knows that. Yeah, it was. It was a playful tip of the cap to Shane Steichen. Jalen Hurts talked about it after. He's the one who let us in that it was a Shane Steichen play. And it was a playful, Nick and Shane are very close friends. And, it was more of an homage. But, if you don't let all 90 players in on it, and obviously you can't, they might have let all 90 players in on it, but you can't let all 90 players on the Colts in on it. So they probably, at least some of them took it the way you took it and saying, what the hell are you running a gadget play? And the Eagles aren't a gadget team. I talked to Shane Steichen about that last year. They don't do anything gadgety. And Shane was honest about it and said, we don't have to. Why would you do that? We're good. Yeah, that's for bad teams, basically, is what he said. So they're not a gadget team to begin with. And they pull it out. So yeah, I didn't take it that way, but I could see some of the Colts looking at it that way.
So as could I, because they don't know that it's a tip of the cap, homage, use whatever you want to describe it between coaches and coaches. They just know, well, wait a minute. I've been playing scrimmages forever, and nobody's ever run that kind of a play during a scrimmage. So I could see where the Colts got a little perturbed by that particular play.
By the way, it worked.
Was the guy.
It worked.
Yeah, he was. Calcaterra was open, made a good catch. So not surprising that it worked. But yeah,
and we also learned from that Kenny Gainwell is ambidextrous. He can throw the football with his right hand and his left hand, and he threw it with his left hand. I did not know that.
Well, chances are the Eagles calling Kenny Gainwell halfback option pass with either rolling right or rolling left this year.
I say 10%.
Oh,
I'm going to go 10%.
I say 2%. Not
10%. They might throw it out there because they saw success. That's what breeds. You say, hey, that worked. That was a good play by Shane. No. By the way, now I mentioned this last night, Jody. You keep hearing one name in all of this: Kenny Gainwell, Kenny Gainwell, Kenny Gainwell. Guy's always on the stinking field, especially in the high leverage situations. So Brawl to talk about. And again, 20-20, they never practice. First quarter, you get the ball at the 25-yard line. Who's going to be out there? Maybe it's somebody different, but big situations, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell.
We shall see once games start. Before we get there, we got to get to tomorrow night's game and how the Eagles are going to deploy their players there. But I still got some more questions for you for yesterday's practice. At least where everybody's reporting it. Devontae Smith put on a show yesterday.
Yeah, to the detriment of poor Darrell Baker. That's the thing, I see it on the Eagles side. I was talking about it with AJ and James Bradbury. AJ had a day on Sunday, I guess it was, just a phenomenal day at practice. But you know what? Bradbury was in his hip every step of the way. It's just making great catches. That was the case here. He went up. There were back-to-back plays, basically a go route where he just mossed him, Darrell Baker. Darrell Baker was right there, and Devontae just went up. And, he's got this weird, I talk about it all the time, he's got this weird frame. He's 170 pounds, but he's long, and he's got these giant hands, and he just snatches the football out of the air. And he bobbled it a little bit coming down, was able to bring it in. And on the very next play, Baker just got beat deep and was a drill where they weren't just rolling it back. So they had the ball like the 8-yard line or whatever. And, he played off a little bit and him and Jalen Hurts just went back shoulder. And it was perfect throw from Jalen Hurts. That, by the way, is the most impressive part of Jalen Hurts' development. He's been dominant with those back shoulder throws. And it's not just, usually it's the AJ, but it's not just the AJ. He's just got a knack for, putting the ball on and you're going to see it in New York with your Jets, North Jersey, because nobody's ever been better with the back shoulder than Aaron Rodgers. But Jalen, man, when you make that throw, there's nothing you can do as a defensive back. Nothing.
No, that it's different on every single play, depending on where the defender is, how close the coverage is, or whatever. Just generally speaking, I always think back shoulder throws are more generated by the receiver than the quarterback. The quarterback's throwing it to a specific spot, and yes, he's trying to get it to a guy and reading exactly the way he's going to run the route and turn and spin and contort his body. I always thought that the receiver, you can't make a good back shoulder throw if you don't have a receiver that you trust and a guy who can physically make the play. That the receiver doesn't get enough credit on a back shoulder throw. Oh, great back shoulder throw by the quarterback. Receiver's got to make the play on a back shoulder throw, which isn't always easy.
They're part of it. I agree with you there because you have to trust the receiver. You always have to trust receivers. That's, coaches tell me all the time that, the one thing you can't do as a receiver is fool the quarterback. You can't fool the quarterback. You got to be where you're supposed to be. But back shoulder is all about accuracy. So if you're not accurate as a thrower, you're 6 inches inside versus, in this case, you're 6 inches outside instead of inside. It's a PBU. You're a foot inside. You're giving a good cornerback a chance to take it back the other way.
Right. Interception more at risk than any
and
there's leading them throw.
And there's a lot of inaccurate quarterbacks in the NFL. And there's some very accurate quarterbacks. And it starts with, as I said, it starts with Aaron and then it goes down. But Jalen's gotten really good at it. Really good at it.
All right. So they have this melee skirmish, call it what you want. And coaches pretty quickly decide, yeah, that's enough. Let's call this bad boy because there wasn't that much time left to what they had planned on practicing. So it ends a little bit early. And the quarterback got ticked. He wasn't done. He wanted to finish out. He knew full well, this is it for me. You're not seeing me until I jog out on the field up in Foxborough. So he was a little appreciative of the fact that they called off the rest of the practice. and that's basically Jalen Hurts. He always wants to play. He always wants to practice. He's always driven. He's always motivated. He's always laser focused, and that came out again yesterday. He get over that pretty easily?
Yeah, I think so. It was 10, 15 minutes. They might have had one more period with the first team, and that would have been it anyway. So it happened late in practice. Yeah, I mean, I knew they were going to call it as soon as it happened. I mean, that's the way the NFL is going. Anything happens, they're just going to shut these things down, whether it's games or joint practices. But yeah, I don't think it's going to matter one way or the other. But Jalen is very focused. He's also very he's become very media savvy, so he knows what to say. And he's not going to say, who cares? He's going to say, oh, everything matters. He's very on point when it comes to that.
All right, so they call practice off. You got to analyze and I'm going to hit you on a whole bunch of different positions, but start where it all starts in the NFL, quarterback. What were the breakout reps for the quarterbacks yesterday in practice?
It was all Hurts and Mariota. No reps for anybody else. It's just in these joint practices, it's first and second team. That's pretty much it. So that's why the Eagles value them so much. That's where the key players get all the work, and the game is for the other guys. And that's a disservice for the fans. We've talked about that, but it is what it is at this point. What it would be interesting to me is, you have to jointly negotiate these joint practices. So it's not like the NFL is decreeing you have to have joint practices. These are between the teams and the organizations.
Right.
There might be some year that the team says we don't want to do it for whatever reason. Maybe they have too many injuries. You've seen it around the league with guys canceling for different reasons. And it would have been interesting to me if the Eagles didn't have these joint practices, how they would have handled the preseason games. It probably would have been different. But when they have these joint practices, that's how they're going to handle it. You're not going to see the key players, and the third teamers. They don't get any work at these things, Jody, except individual and some of that stuff. And occasionally they have a developmental period at the end. Obviously, that didn't happen because they canceled it. So
I saw it reported that earlier this week, 5 teams in the NFL had no joint practices. 27 out of 32 had at least one, and the Eagles had 3 versus 2 teams. They might have done more than anybody else. And that, but you're right. You have to agree to all the terms ahead of time with the team that you're practicing. The NFL doesn't schedule it. That's up to the individual teams when they match up. How'd Mariota play with his second team reps?
He was okay. I mean, I don't think he's a great quarterback at this stage. But he wasn't abysmal. He's clear. For anybody thinking there's a competition, there's not. He's their backup quarterback. And as I said, cross those fingers because you probably don't want to see him. He's still got a lot of juice as an RPO, as a runner, still can run the football really well. But I was just talking about accuracy. He's not accurate. He's not an accurate thrower. Never has been. And it hasn't gotten better. So, if he has to play, I think you're going to see this team even go more RPO heavy than they are with Jalen Hurts, because I don't think he has the accuracy to throw the ball consistently.
Should the Eagles be at least evaluating the situation, or just throw your hands up and go, we made the decision. It is what it is. We got to stick with it. We got to live or die by it. Do you think that's going to be the team's attitude?
I don't think they would die by it. I think if he had to play and played poorly, they would address it at that point and say, all right, let's take a look at the kid who's done some. In other words, if the worst happens, and fans are going to get upset just bringing it up, but Jalen gets hurt early in the season and you have to play Marcus Mariota, I don't think that automatically gives him 13, 14 games. If he starts to perform poorly, yeah, I don't think they would just default to him and say, oh, Tanner McKee's not ready. I think if the one thing Brock Purdy proved, and I know he proved it to you, but he should have proved it to the rest of the league is, all right, don't pigeonhole people because of where they're picked or whatever. Maybe they can play. The NFL gets it wrong. The Eagles should know that from TJ Edwards in recent years. They should know it from Reed Blankenship now. Sometimes the NFL misses these guys or misses their evaluation. So I don't think they would say, I think it's over from the perspective of week one, Marcus Mariota is the backup quarterback. And if something happens, he's the backup quarterback. But if he performs poorly, yeah, I think just like Atlanta last year when he was the starter, I think eventually they would hook him.
Agreed. So that gets us to tomorrow night. Knowing that, going into the season, knowing that, how do you handle those quarterback reps in the final preseason game?
I think it's going to be an all McKee book game.
Mariota doesn't play at all.
I would think he wouldn't play at all. I thought he might not play in the second game, and he played quite a bit. I would imagine if he does play, it would be, 2 series and then out, and then Tanner McKee, and then you finish up with Ian Book. But I don't see any reason why you can't give Tanner one half and maybe even let him come out in the third quarter and then Ian Book finish the game. I mean, that's what these guys are here for. That's why they changed the rule. That's why you don't have no cut down. It's 90 to 53, one fell swoop. You have all 90 players for this final preseason game. Well, everybody that's healthy. That's one of the reasons why.
No, the Colts are in a completely different situation than the Eagles. Jalen Hurts was the runner-up for the MVP. Last year, the Colts starting quarterback was throwing incomplete passes at the University of Florida. So you can't comp the two, but the Colts are going to start Richardson tonight, give him some more action, understandable, because he's just got to work with some of his guys. Does that mean they're going to be playing their one wide receivers and their first offensive line? You won't know till they get out there on the field on Thursday. Did anybody talk about Shane or anybody talk about that after the SA joint?
Nobody was worried about the game after the big fights. But to me, I mean, if you're going to play your starting quarterback, you got to play your starting players. What good does it throw it out?
What are you getting out of it? Just him to be out there with the backups? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's going to make him look worse. Not having. At least he's developed some kind of chemistry with and obviously the better players. The second part is, offensive line wise, you don't want the backup offensive line out there with the starting quarterback. That makes zero sense. So yeah, if you're going to play him, you got to play the starters. And that's, as you mentioned, that's a completely different situation. It's a rookie quarterback who needs as many reps as possible versus, put them in bubble wrap type thing. Like, I'm stunned the Jets are playing Aaron Rodgers. I can't even fathom that. Guy hasn't played a preseason game.
They played 4 games. So he's already sat for 3. So they just want to get him out there with a couple of his guys. My guess is there's no way he sees the second quarter. So he's going to play 2 possessions.
You can tell he's motivated. Normally he would shut that down. You can tell he's motivated. So that's another good sign for the Jets. He's very motivated to prove Green Bay wrong and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I still wouldn't play him. I mean, but that's me. There's a lot of ways you can go about it. A lot of guys are different. Andy's still old school. It's working for him, the old school method.
Right. Mahomes threw 15 passes on Saturday. 15.
So.
Not like go out, throw 3 passes.
And by the way, I still get the feeling if it were up to Nick Sirianni, it would be different. And I say that because every once in a while, Nick will say when he's talking about injuries, he'll say it's football. I mean, guys are going to get hurt. I mean, that's part of it. You got to go out there and play. So I think if he had more power, it would probably be a little bit different, but we are where we are.
Well, I do want to ask you about the coach's opinion on one of his players when he comes back, and you can't just go, it's football, with the guy I'm going to ask you about once again.
Football, Jody.
Okay, I'm daring you to say that when I ask you about Derek Barnett when we come back next segment. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are Mac and Mac. I believe this is the case. Now, we got some loyal guys who stream in here every single day, and we appreciate you greatly. We're assuming you're the 3 guys with the like button all the time. Come on, show a little love to Mac and Mac. Feel free to hit that like button.
There's a lot of people who hit the like button on YouTube, but we can't see it during the show.
You're sure of that? I'm not sure of that. Anyway, so if you do want to, you can hit the like button. I don't believe this has ever happened. Johnny Mac, today is show number 593. I don't know we've ever had anybody tap out right before the show starts. Our buddy, Brandon Lee Gouton, was scheduled to join us, scheduled to be on the air already by now. And he's under the weather, and he sent me a very early text apologizing and begging off. I don't know that we've ever had anybody do it morning of. Night before, yeah, sorry, I overscheduled. I'm sick as a dog.
Well, hey, we had Mike Gill, but Mike Gill told me he was on vacation, yesterday afternoon. So, even that. So we got tapped out on twice. Yeah. Because I was like torn asunder by Mike Gill's late to vacation plans.
Okay. And BLG, I asked him, he said he'd hop on, and then unfortunately came up under the weather today. Maybe that'll be fitting that we bring up the player that I'm going to bring up, who I think should be tapped out of the Eagle organization before the season starts. We'll see if John thinks that's going to be the case. But yeah, a little bit more of Mac and Mac today. Hour number 2, we're going to get our guy Martin Frank up, which, by the way,
hopefully
I had never,
maybe Martin taps out in the next hour.
Am I putting the cart before the horse here by promoting Martin Frank? You told me you saw Brad Spielberger yesterday at the Eagles practice.
Yeah, and I call him the rangy Brad Spielberger now. He's like a long corner.
I've never met him. We've had him on the air. He does a great job whenever he comes on. He's a very good writer. But I've never met him. And you said big guy, surprisingly big, rangy, if that's the term you want to use to describe him.
Tall guy.
Tall,
very
and
thin.
I said,
tall, thin. He's a corner body.
I said, is he as tall as BLG? And your response was,
no, nobody's as tall as
BLG.
You got to go to the NBA to get somebody taller than BLG.
So our bigs not with us today. Somehow we'll get through. How tall is Martin Frank?
Martin's he's a little bit taller than me, I think. So he's got to be 6 foot, 6'1". I'm 5'11"-ish. He's got to be 6 foot, 6'1", I would say. I think.
So we'll squeeze Martin Frank in today if he doesn't tap out between now and 9:20. We're going to tap out for a quick timeout, come back. I still got things from yesterday's practice and looking ahead to the Thursday game. The Jalen Hurts Sports Illustrated curse. I got to ask Mr. Sports Illustrated about that here today. So we got a lot yet to do. Keep it right here on Birds 365.